how is it that you work so few hours nowadays? That was a question that I posed to a friend, and he responded, Mike, after working for years and years, for 80 hours a week, I realized that what I was going after was not what I actually wanted. I was missing out on so much. That scenario right there plays into what we're talking about today. Why are we doing what we're doing? For the sake of what? With Blaine Bartlett.
Welcome to Advance with Mike Acker, the podcast designed to help entrepreneurs, business leaders, and professionals alike break through barriers by improving their practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Your host is a best-selling author, executive coach, and founder of the Advance Public Speaking School and Advantage Publishing Group, two companies dedicated to providing an edge for leaders. Find out more about Mike at mikeacker.com. Now here's your host, Mike Acker.
Recently, I had the opportunity to be on the podcast with Blaine Bartlett, and I loved being part of his show, and so much so that I decided, hey, Blaine, would you come on and be a part of my brand new podcast, which we're talking about advancing people. So Blaine Bartlett is an executive coach, a best-selling author. He is a keynote speaker. You can find him all over the internet with some of the incredible work that he's done. And I'm honored to have him today to my show. Welcome, Blaine. Thank you for being here with me.
Oh, Mike, absolutely. My honor. I've been looking forward to this. We had such a great conversation on my solo business podcast that when you invited me, it was kind of like, absolutely, I'm in.
So, great. Yeah, and we have a hometown connection in the state of Washington. So that was kind of fun as well.
Up here in Seattle right now, it's November. We've got 50, 60 mile an hour winds and rain. So
absolutely. That's what I grew up with. And right now I'm in Fairhope, Alabama. So I won't tell you, but well, maybe I will. On Saturday, I went to the beach and hung out and we went swimming and everything. So don't mean to rub it in, but just maybe a little bit.
Yep. Consider it rubbed.
And for everybody, check out Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. And I think you'll really enjoy what he has to say. And that really brings us to really what I wanted to talk about here today and bring for all of us as everyone here that is really subscribing and be a part of the show are business leaders, professionals, doctors, top-level leaders, or entrepreneurs who really that's their goals, to establish a company, establish a business, establish a brand in which they're making an impact. So Blaine, for all of us, in the work that you do, you talk a lot about soul of business. Can you unpack that idea a little bit?
Yeah, a book I wrote was called Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business. And just a shameless plug here. It was a #1 international bestseller. We hit #1 in 5 different countries. And the reason I mention that in part has to do with the tagline, A Soul of Business. Business is the most pervasive force on the planet today. I mean, it literally touches everything. And when Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations way back in 1776, he talked about something that he called the invisible hands of commerce. And that was informed by a book that he wrote about 14 years earlier called The Theory of Moral Sentiment, which essentially, and this is a very general description here, but essentially it talked about the fact that, and it is now a proven fact, that everything is connected in some way. Everything on this planet, literally everything in this universe is connected. A word for that can be soul. So when we're talking about the soul of business, what we're really talking about is what Adam Smith originally envisioned when he wrote The Wealth of Nations, which became our model of capitalism today. He envisioned organizations and individuals, he called them virtuous individuals, transacting business, yes, in service of themselves. There was a self-interest involved, but they did it with a mind towards what's the collective impact on the greater group that I'm connected with. So I'm taking actions that benefit me, but they also have to, by definition, benefit the others because I am connected with the others. And we call those today stakeholders. So the soul of business is a recognition that everything has a soul. And it's that spark of creativity, that spark that kind of brought it into life, if you will. I mean, a tree has a soul, a rock has a soul, I have a soul, and my business has a soul. And I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form in a religious context. It's just fundamentally, from a physics perspective, everything's connected, and it's got this spark that creates as a consequence. So that's what the soul of business is about. It's tapping into and staying present with that connection, that pervasive connection, and then making decisions and taking actions that are not, I mean, if I had a druther, anybody that's leading a business today would take something akin to a Hippocratic oath, that the doctors take. First, do no harm. And if that was the credo of business, we would have a very different landscape today, I think, than what we have.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. When you asked me that question originally, when we were just having our initial conversation, I thought of the esprit to the core, in terms of in the military. And then when I went and getting ready for this podcast, I was just reading about some of what you wrote on your website, and you talk about that same esprit. It is this thing that happens when people get together. And so one business looks different because it's got a different soul of that business. And there's a different vibe in this place. And a lot of people call it different things. And I love how you bring it in. And yeah, you're not going religious with it, but sometimes that's the way we can understand what a soul is, with kind of that philosophical, religious mindset. And so even as you see a soul in a person, a business has that. What do you think creates that in a business?
Well, I think it's not so much created as much as it is present. Then the question is how is it manifested? Through actions, through decisions, through behaviors. In my philosophical bias, it just exists. If I'm witnessing something, by definition, it has that element that I call a soul to it. It's that, here's a way to think about this in terms of an interesting word, beauty. Plato's virtues, amongst, he had a number of virtues. I think there was 11 of them. But the peak, the top one, was beauty. And beauty, it wasn't cosmetic beauty. It was, something was beautiful to the beholder when the beholder was able to apprehend, when they were able to connect with that inner peace that actually gave presence to what it was that I was experiencing and looking at. And it can be a beautiful painting. It can be, most commonly, most people have reference to as a beautiful sunset. We connect with the soul of it, and it's in that connection that we apprehend beauty, that we experience that state of awe that comes with beauty. And I think companies have that opportunity to be beautiful. I certainly think that leadership can be beautiful. It oftentimes isn't, but beautiful leadership is awe-inspiring. Those sorts of things kind of go hand in hand, I believe.
I was reading some of what you had written, and at some point in time, you talk about the amount of hours that we spend in business, the amount of hours that we spend at work, and how many of us, and I've been there before, right, where you spend a ton of your life in this place and it's not beautiful and you don't feel connected and you feel like you're just a cog. And probably a lot of people listening are saying, yes, I feel that way. Well, especially if we have the opportunity to be managers or leaders, what are some ways that we can help our work, whether we're in charge of it or whether we're just a participant, how can we make business more meaningful? What are some thoughts on that?
I love that question. And it's very consistent with the theme of your podcast. There's two things that come to mind for me. Most businesses and most leaders, most managers will organize a lot of their activity, at least theoretically, around the attainment of a vision for their organization. Mm-hmm. That's all well and good, but it oftentimes doesn't work particularly well because people don't really understand the nature of a vision. I'll use vision and goal interchangeably here. The purpose of a vision or the purpose of a goal isn't to get anything. Now, we will get things, if we set objectives out there. The purpose of any vision or any goal is to grow. And that, by definition, is what the soul is designed to do. The soul of anything is designed to grow, to express more fully and more extravagantly, what it's about. So managers and leaders in organizations today can start with a question. I mean, you're going to have a vision. I've never worked with a company that doesn't have a vision of some sort. But the key question that doesn't get asked oftentimes is, for the sake of what?
Yeah.
What does this make possible? And that's the key ingredient around a vision. I don't care what the vision is. What's important about a vision isn't the wordsmithing. What's important about the vision is what it makes possible. And that ultimately is what leadership's about. Leadership's the art of bringing possibility into reality.
I like that.
So the for the sake of what is a mechanism that we use to connect others to our vision. I can't get excited about your vision unless I find a little piece of it that belongs to me. And that's what, the question, for the sake of what? I take that to my employees. I take that to my banker. My stakeholders. If we're successful at doing this, what does it make possible for you? For the sake of what is this important for you? I know why it's important for me. So that question becomes, I think, absolutely crucial when we're starting to look at how we lead and manage and actually run organizations. Right. So I guess that's kind of where I'd land on that. And the other part of it just has to do with how we define leadership. It's the art, really. It is the art. It's an art and a science, but it's about co-creating coordinated movement. And I'm not going to get co-created coordinated movement unless there's a common for the sake of what, or for the sake of what that's meaningful to all that are involved.
Nice. Yeah, I love that question right there too, because it's crucial in leadership that you be asking that question. And also, that I do a lot in communication. And one of the key ideas is, when you're speaking, is what are you going for? In the second book I wrote called Right to Speak, I talk about identifying the what of what you're saying. What is your purpose? What is your goal? And in leadership and in any type of role, what am I ultimately hoping to get out of this? So say you're listening to this and you got a 27-year-old person who's looking at just going up the charts. Do you think that's a good starting point for that person, just to say, like, what am I trying to attain out of going up the charts?
Yeah, I think it's an absolutely crucial question to ask. And for this reason, it is real easy to sell our souls. It's real easy for a business to sell its soul. It's real easy for an individual to lose their soul. And I mean it in this way. We oftentimes get captured by what society tells us is the success model that we should aspire to, whether it's a bigger bank account or whether it's a car, or I don't really care what it is. I need to stop and ask myself, for the sake of what? And if that for the sake of what doesn't resonate with me, then I have to pause and actually take stock. I'm continuously in the process. Here, there's an orientation that I work with in the literally in the coaching work that I do here. Am I designing a life that designs me back? And that's an ontological question. Does my environment design me? And my design. Most of us transact business in environments, in businesses that we inherited. We didn't have much say on the design side. Right. And what we want to be able to do, and this is when we start looking at how do you move forward here, you want to be intentional about designing the environment that you have access to, that you have control over and influence over, in a way that designs the best in you. It requires you to actually step up and step in. And that kind of goes to the comment that you made earlier about, we spend a lot of our lives at work. And for most people, that is not an inspiring place to be. Yeah, it's very interesting. Designed to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was thinking about it as you said that. Recently, I switched out of Fortune 500 corporate work to move over and do my own thing, right? So I have 2 companies I launched, and really, for the sake of what, is to be more present, with my wife and with my son. Now she works, and I get to pick up my son most days at 2:00, which means I have to stop working. And sometimes that's hard. And about one day a week, my wife picks him up, and sometimes my mother-in-law will pick him up from school. And so today I'm going a little bit longer than that normal deal and putting in a normal day. And that means that sometimes I have to work at night. Sometimes it means I have to work in the morning, or sometimes it means I just work less. And I think inside all of us, there's this go-getter kind of drive to not only work the 40 hours a week, but then to do above and beyond. And I love your question, for the sake of what?
Yeah. And that answer will change. I mean, honestly, it will. And because you mentioned, the 27-year-old that is, they're in empire building mode at that point. And as you get older, and you talked about family, things start to shift. There's new things that I'm paying attention to. There's new demands on my time. There's new demands on my resources that are important to me. So I may move from empire building to more of from a pioneer perspective, from a scout to a pioneer to a settler sort of a thing here. And it's a natural life cycle, depending on how we're actually approaching the maturation process.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And I wish we had another whole different time to just unpack scout, pioneer, and settler, because those three terms have so much meaning in terms of life stage or an organizational stage. So you could be a 50-year-old entrepreneur and you're starting over as a scout. I love that. Now, in your book, Compassionate Capitalism, which is right there on your shelf, I know people can get it at any store, and it's a great resource. I found out about you from someone else, and they were talking about that. And then it turned out that they co-wrote that with you. So tell me a little bit about this whole Compassionate Capitalism book, and really what's a takeaway that they can get diving into that.
Oh, good. I forget how many years ago, but two very good friends of mine, John Mackey, who was the co-founder of Whole Foods, and Raj Sisodia, who's a professor at Babson University, business professor, co-wrote a book called Conscious Capitalism. And that became the foundation for the conscious capitalism movement. And in conversations with them, it became pretty obvious to me at one point that, consciousness is one thing, because I'll use another word for consciousness here, and is awareness. I'm being conscious of stakeholder needs. I'm being aware of stakeholder needs. Awareness doesn't necessarily imply action. It's just a noticing. So for me, there was a piece that was missing. And this kind of takes us back to Adam Smith and the invisible hands. The invisible hands talked about behaviors that were informed by connection. And compassion is, for me, the quintessential expression of connection. I care about the quality of your experience in living, and I will do what I can, and that's the behavioral piece, to ensure, to the degree I can, that your experience of living is uplifted. So for me, the purpose of business is to uplift the experience of being alive on the planet. And if I'm doing that well, I'll make a profit. So with that kind of a background, I started looking at, okay, if that was missing in my reading of Conscious Capitalism, what do I get to do here? Well, I get to write a book that's called Compassionate Capitalism. And the first thing out of my mouth when I said that was compassionate capitalism, it really seemed like an oxymoron, because it was anything but. When we look at how the world is run today in business, it's not particularly compassionate. So I started looking around for models that might, kind of represent at least roughly what a compassionate organization would look like. And this is, Raj Sisodia. He had written a book called Firms of Endearment. I love that title, Firms of Endearment. And these were organizations that had, in some way, shape, or form, love and caring, and literally love and caring as part of their espoused values. And more than espoused values, they were part of the operational values. And what he did was he took a look at their performance and contrasted them to Jim Collins' Good to Great companies and the S&P index. And these Firms of Endearment outperformed, radically these other organizations. So that was kind of a proof of concept that, if you're paying attention to this sort of stuff, it has a benefit to it, a business benefit. There's a business case to be made. And in that exploration, I stumbled on this fellow, actually an introduction from my wife, and she was doing some work with him with her philanthropic foundation. And then, David Meltzer. David runs Sports One Marketing, which was and is, I believe, the largest sports marketing firm on the planet. And when I went to visit him, I looked around and I just kind of hung around for half a day. It was a compassionately run organization. Everything about it was a compassionately capitalistic organization. Yeah, make a difference, have fun, and make a lot of money. I mean, that's the credo of Sports One Marketing. And that idea, kind of sat with me, or that noticing sat with me. And I said, David, you've got some great stories here. Would you like to, finish this book with me? And I had it probably about 80% done at that time. Yeah, because I wanted to use some of his stories. So he and I ended up co-writing Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business. And so that's kind of the genealogy of how that came to pass.
Yeah, I love that. What a great endeavor for you to do with somebody else who actually was putting it into practice in an industry that a lot of people would say is not very compassionate. Marketing, when you think about marketing, you don't think, man, compassionate. That's what marketing is. But right. I love how he's doing
competitive. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like really.
Right. Yeah. Right. Now, I've had a chance to listen to some of Dan Meltzer's stuff as well, and I love his whole drive that he has, and to know that it's backed by what we're talking about here today is powerful. Well, thank you so much for being with me on this conversation, Blaine. I'm sure we're going to stay connected as time goes on and really find ways to collaborate and maybe do future appearances as well. Is there anything that you would just say to our audience here today and just leave them with a parting thought?
Oh, yeah. Okay, we're out of time. Well, I'm a teacher, so I love to talk. So I'm going to make, I'll try to make this real short. Viktor Frankl talked about between stimulus and response, there's a space. And what we fill that space with makes a difference. It's where we get to grow, and it's where we get to actually tap into our soul. So if I had anything to suggest, it would be for people to start paying attention to the habituated need that they have to react to stimulus, and take a 5 count. Just take a 5 count, take a breath, and then look at what kind of a response would I want to have myself make here, for the sake of what? Is it going to produce something out there? So, because it will produce something out there. My future is a consequence of decisions that I make today. And it's that aggregation of decisions that I'm making today. And most of those decisions are reactive, unconscious decisions. I want to be in charge of. This is the ontological question of, how do I design a life that designs me back? It's not easy, but it's worth doing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Blaine. I really appreciate this. And people can find you at blainebartlett.com. They can find you at Avatar Resources, Avatar-Resources. Your books are on Amazon. And the book that we've been talking about today is Compassionate Capitalism. So once again, I just really appreciate this and our time together. I love your question, for the sake of what? And so I'll be putting that in our show notes and just some different places, and making sure that people can find you on the show notes as well. So once again, thank you so much. And thank you so much for investing. Even as I launched this podcast, you and I took some time at the end of our last one, and you just gave me some thoughts. And so I appreciate your investment in me as well.
My pleasure, my friend. You take care. Be safe.
You too, as well.
Thanks for listening to Advance with Mike Acker, a podcast designed to provide an edge for leaders through improving practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Mike is a best-selling author and business owner who has helped many leaders increase their skills and their confidence, propelling them to new heights in their personal and professional endeavors. Join an incredible group of professionals taking the steps to become better leaders at connect.stepstoadvance.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.